I'd like to introduce you to my client, Pat. Pat and I have been training together for about 9 months now. And on the next slide, we're going to watch a short 30-second video clip of Pat introducing himself. Now, while he's up there, I want you to imagine that he's your client and that you're meeting him for the very first time.
Yes, my name is Pat Fitzgerald. I'm 51 years old. As far as my goals go, right before the New Year's, my friends and I figured out that it would be a good idea to try to set a goal to lose some weight. And with one of my friends getting married in June, we all started weekly weigh-ins. I started out at 252 pounds, and my goal is 220 pounds by June 1st.
So that's Pat. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dan McGinley. I'm a coach at MBSC, and one of the biggest challenges I face, and I'm sure that many of you face as well, is coaching clients on their behaviors outside of the gym. I emphasize outside of the gym because we have a lot of knowledge and spend a lot of time learning about the technical side of training. But the elephant in the room is that we all know it's what happens away from here that ultimately determines the success our clients have. So today, I want to introduce you to the framework I'm using to help coach Pat on the 23 hours when he's not with me, a framework that will ultimately change his behavior. So here's what the next 20 minutes or so is going to look like. First, I'm going to introduce you to the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. Next, I'm going to take you through the framework applied in the book for coaching behavior change. And finally, we're going to apply that framework, and I'll show you how I'm using it to coach Pat in his own behavior change. So why is this important, and why should we care about coaching behavior change? For a few reasons. First, every single person that you train is trying to change something, whether it's how much they weigh, how strong they are, how much pain they're in. Nobody comes to the gym and works with a coach in order to stay exactly the same. And at the root of whatever it is they're trying to change is ultimately their behavior. Second, we all as coaches are trying to be more successful and make more money. And how do we become more successful and make more money? We have to become the type of coach that get our clients lasting results. We have to get them the change that they came to the gym and came to train with us for in the first place. And once we do that, we have to coach them on making that change sustainable. And from there, we make the connection between their sustainable change and we as their coaches. And when we can do that, we move from having just clients to having clients for life. But we need to deliver that change first. Reading the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath ultimately changed the way I think about coaching. The thesis of the book is that all change is ultimately behavior change. And what that means is that for anything to change, someone somewhere needs to start behaving differently. Behave being the key word there. But we all know that that's much easier said than done. So why is behavior change so difficult? Well, it's important to understand that our brains operate with two independent systems at all times: our rational brain and our emotional brain. Our rational brain is the side that's responsible for information, reason, and ideas. Our emotional brain is responsible for giving us cravings, motivation, and runs on autopilot for most of the time. Now, in an ideal world, these two systems would work together. Our rational brain would think up of an idea, and then our emotional brain would motivate us to go and execute on that idea. But if that were the case, all of our clients would already be wildly successful at achieving all of their goals. The reality is that these two systems are constantly battling one another. And what we see is that it creates a big divide between knowing what to do and being motivated to actually go and do it. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt has a great analogy to describe these two systems. He says that our emotional brain is like a giant elephant, and that our rational brain is like a tiny human rider on top. The biggest thing to notice about this analogy is the scale difference. We have this huge, giant elephant and this tiny little rider on top. If these two are to get into a tug of war, the elephant wins every single time. This is critical because it helps us understand that it's our emotional brain that is really in charge of most of our decisions. The funny thing about this is that when most of us go about trying to create behavior change, we work with the rider first, and we forget that it's the elephant that ultimately makes the decision. Now, there's also a third element to this framework, and that's the path. So even if our rider and elephant are moving along forward, if there's obstacles in the path, it's unlikely that they reach their destination. So now let's look at each component of this framework in a little bit more detail, starting with directing the rider. Again, the rider is the rational side of our brain. Its strengths are planning and organizing. When we make New Year's resolutions and then plan out all the ways we're going to achieve our goals in the New Year's, that's our rider and our rational brain at work. The goal when working with the rider is to create clarity. We want to create exactly what needs to be done. How do we do this? Two ways. We find the bright spots and we script the critical moves. Find the bright spots means that we shine a light on what the client is already doing well and work to emulate more of that behavior. Let's say we have a client who's trying to change unhealthy eating behaviors. We would actually look to find when they're doing a really good job in eating healthy meals throughout the day, and then focus on that behavior and try to recreate that in other scenarios throughout their week. Scripting the critical moves is like pulling up GPS directions before we make a road trip. We're going to give the client specific directions and specific actions to take during their most difficult situations before those situations arise. Let's say a client is able to eat healthy throughout the entire day, but as soon as they get home from work, they lose all control and eat a whole bunch of junk food. We would script out that time period between them getting home from work and them eating dinner and give them specific directions on where to go and what to do. Maybe it's put your running shoes on and take a walk around the block before dinner's ready. Or maybe it's go to a different area of the house and play with your kids until supper's done. This way, they know exactly what to do, exactly where to go, and it removes any ambiguity and confusion about what to do in those difficult behaviors. Next, let's talk about how we motivate the elephant. Again, the elephant is the doer, the side that's responsible for giving us our cravings and running us on autopilot. We can usually get our clients' elephants moving initially. The real challenge is in keeping those elephants moving throughout the course of their change. So how do we do that? 3 ways. First, we shrink the change. Shrinking the change means that we limit the perceived investment we're asking clients to make. We all know that clients would probably get better results training 3 or 4 days a week with us. But for someone who's never exercised before, that can be a huge, daunting task to take on. So maybe we limit the investment we're asking them to make. And we ask them to train for 1 or 2 times a week, initially, until they get comfortable and build up some confidence. Second, we celebrate small wins. Celebrating small wins means that we, again, highlight the behaviors that lead up to the ultimate change, instead of focusing on just the change itself. So your client wants to lose 30 pounds. Again, that can be a big, daunting task. What we do is celebrate all of the behaviors that are ultimately going to lead up to that change and get them to their goal. Finally, we create an identity. Creating an identity asks our clients to become the type of person that would achieve the change they're trying to make. Again, your client is trying to become somebody that exercises frequently. We would have them create an identity of somebody that doesn't miss a workout. That way, every time they make it to the gym, they're reinforcing that they are that type of person, and therefore they are the type of person that can achieve the change they're trying to make. Finally, let's talk about how we shape the path. Again, the path is the environment in which the change occurs. This is critical because, as Chip Heath says in the book Switch, what looks like a people problem is often a situation problem. The goal when working to shape the path is to create ease. We want to make it as easy and convenient as possible for our clients to do the behaviors that are going to help lead towards their change, and make it as inconvenient as possible for them to do the behaviors that are going to take them away from their change. How do we do that? 2 ways. We tweak the environment and we build positive habits. Tweaking the environment means we create a situation for our clients that makes it convenient for them to do the behaviors that are going to help lead towards their change. You have a client who does really well throughout the whole day, eating healthy, but as soon as they get home from work at night, they eat a bunch of ice cream. We would tweak their environment by removing the ice cream from their house. That way, every time they wanted something, they'd have to get into their car, drive to the store, and buy some ice cream. That makes it much more inconvenient and much more unlikely that that behavior occurs. Creating positive habits is critical because habits are essentially behavioral autopilot. So when we can get our clients to make habits out of positive behaviors that are going to help lead towards their change, that's like a double win. Not only are they doing that positive habit, but they're essentially doing it for free without having to use any of their limited willpower in order to get it done. So here's a visual for the entire framework we just walked through. Again, it's critical that we need to address all 3 components in order to create sustainable change. We need to direct the rider by working with the rational brain. We need to motivate the elephant by working with the emotional brain. And we need to shape the path by creating an environment in which the change will occur. So now let's use this framework and apply it to Pat, who we met earlier. The biggest mistake I've made in the past is whenever I tried to help a client make a change in their lives, I always started by trying to direct the rider first. I would do this by giving them things like articles and information to read. And it's not that doing any of those things were necessarily wrong or bad, but what I've learned is that a much better place to start is with the elephant. As Chip Heath says in the book Switch, most struggles are not one of knowledge, but one of motivation. This is certainly the case for Pat. He's a smart guy who has a lot of knowledge. He just needs to be motivated to do what he knows he needs to do. So first, let's take a look at what's going to motivate Pat.
So I've got a few goals. At the top of the list is definitely my responsibilities as a father and as a husband. To be healthy, to stay alive for my family, not to be a burden. It's definitely something that is important to me. I play basketball also, recreationally, and as much as that might seem a little silly, that I'd want to train for a recreational sport, I like to be as good as I can be. I'm competitive. Our vacations, we like to go out to the national parks, hiking, and just walking great distances to try to be as alone as possible in the wilderness. And again, you know, it helps to be in really good shape, particularly when a lot of these parks are at high altitudes. You know, really what it comes down to is I like to feel good. I like to fit my clothes. And if I can use this contest, this goal of losing weight, where camaraderie, having someone to do it with, which is so important, if I can do that, then I'm absolutely going to do that.
So Pat names a few things motivating him here. Externally, he's motivated by the pickup basketball he plays every Thursday night, and also by those active family vacations he goes on every summer. Internally, he's motivated by his family and being healthy and able to live a long life for his wife and his son. He's also internally motivated by the feeling of being healthy and confident in his own body. These are all really good, really realistic reasons for Pat to make his change. So now it's my job as his coach to harness these motivations and figure out what's going to get him started, and more importantly, what's going to carry him through the long term. Next, let's talk about shaping the path. My goal here is to create an environment that makes it as easy and convenient as possible for Pat to do the behaviors that he knows he needs to do in order to reach his change. First, let's take a look at some of the obstacles in Pat's path.
My Achilles heel is easily late night snacking. Now, it does coincide with the fact that I work that second job and I'm sitting in front of a computer and I'm not moving for a while and I might even be getting bored, so I start eating.
So describe your previous history with diet and exercise. What has or hasn't worked for you in the past?
I was on the South Beach diet about 10 years ago or so, and over the course of 3 months I lost 45 pounds. I went from a 40-inch waist to fitting in snugly, but fitting into 34-inch jeans. And I looked really good, and I was exercising, though not as much as I do now. I kept most of that weight off for a year, and then I put about 20 of it back on. So that's sort of where I was at my 252. That includes that 20 pounds that I put back on. Beyond that, I've tried low-cal diets. I've tried exercising a lot, but there needs to be a better plan and there needs to be a better formula, which is really what brought me to Mike Boyles and brought me to Dan McGinley.
So Pat's got a lot going on here. He names several obstacles in his path. He works 2 jobs, so he has very little free time. He also works late into the night, so his sleep is a mess. He's sitting a lot throughout the day, so he's sedentary quite a bit. And he told us there about his Achilles heel being his late night snacking. Now, another mistake I've made in the past is that I would have tried to change all of these behaviors at once. But trying to change everything at once has never worked for my clients. It's just too much change for anyone to handle. So what I've realized is that coaching behavior change is a lot like the coaching that we do in the weight room. It's got to be progressive, and we've got to focus on one thing at a time. So the one thing that Pat and I are going to work on first is his habit of late night snacking. And in its place, we're going to try to recreate that behavior and insert a positive habit of eating healthier snacks. Finally, let's look at directing Pat's rider in terms of his late night snacking. Pat knows what he needs to do. He knows that he needs to eat healthier. He just told us there in the video. Now it's my job as a coach to show him how to get it done. First, let's look at how the situation typically plays out when it comes to Pat's late night eating. So here's how the situation typically plays out. The cue is it's late at night, Pat's stressed out, and he's tired from working all day. So he goes through the routine of getting up from his desk, finding a whole bunch of junk food and eating it. From there, he gets the reward of a temporary sugar high, which allows him to be more alert and stay awake and get a few more hours worth of work done. The downside of this is it makes Pat feel like crap. His sleep is a mess, and he has no energy to train the next morning. So to address this, I went to work by scripting the critical move of Pat's late night snacking. The cue is going to remain the same. Pat owns his own business, so there's inevitably going to be nights where he has to work late and feel stressed out. What we did is work to tweak the routine. So now when he gets up from his desk late at night, instead of eating junk food, he's going to eat healthier snacks. It's important to understand that this was a very gradual progression for Pat. So we didn't start by eating completely healthy and organic foods all at once. We made slight 1% changes in order to get Pat into the right frame of mind. But what we found is that even small tweaks to Pat's routine significantly changed the reward. So Pat still got that energy boost, most likely just from getting up from his desk and moving. But what we found is that when he started to eat better, he also started to sleep a little bit better, and he had more energy to train the next morning. So here we have the entire framework in its whole. And again, the important thing to understand here is that we worked with one component at a time. And we started with a very important but oftentimes neglected piece, which was motivating Pat's elephant by finding the feeling that was going to keep him motivated for a long time. And for Pat, that was being a father and husband who's healthy and going to be around for his family for many years to come. Next, we worked to shape the path by making it as convenient as possible for Pat to build positive habits that were going to lead him towards his change. And finally, we worked to direct the rider by giving Pat specific instructions on what to do during his most difficult situations. And this is really just the beginning. I'm proud to say that Pat's already down 28 pounds, but he's now a client for life and a friend for life. So I'm going to keep training him over the long term to see how far we can take these changes. So to close this out, I believe that as coaches, we have a lot of knowledge and expertise on the technical side of training. And that's really important. We need to continue to develop those skills. But the elephant in the room is that we oftentimes miss the boat when it comes to the motivational side of training. It all goes back to a quote Alan Cosgrove told Mike years ago. Psychology beats physiology every single time. I believe that if we can continue to motivate our clients' elephants and steer them down the right path, we're going to have clients for life. Thank you.